genre and medium of channels and that sort of thing. Yeah. Thank you very much. Now, the next question, a little, so I hope it, I'm thinking about this story because the book 1984 made quite a big influence on me, particularly on what George Orwell talked about, thought influence, like thought beliefs, or like how ideologies, attitudes, or ideas in a book or in a government can actually change people. Do you think that people are easily changed by books, the ideas in them? Or do you think that books are so powerful that whoever read them will, will inevitably be shaped or changed by them? How about this time with, do you have any preference, like who wants to start this time?
Because whoever has something.
I think we're all sort of taken aback by it. Yes, I think books are, no, not books, words.
Yes.
Let's make a difference, make a specific thing there. Words, yes, are tremendously powerful. And words in the hands of the right person can be an enormous power for good. As in 3 cups of tea, you know, and books like that. Words in the hands of the wrong person can be positively evil. So they must be used with caution and approached with caution. And we, as certainly as in the education world, we have a huge responsibility to ensure that, whilst I don't believe in censorship, we do have a responsibility to make sure that we give our students and our friends the very best that we can possibly find, and the most open words that we can find.
And when I think about this question, I think words, texts have the power to influence and sort of shape history. I do believe that, but I think that the reader is not just passive in that process. I think they bring something to that, your own knowledge and your own ideas. And it can be, it's powerful in that it can be a tool or building block to increase your understanding of something, and that you give back to that story as you make it part of yourself and tell it again with changes and as it comes over time. And so I think that I came across an interesting story when I was looking at stuff to talk about for this week, and the idea of during the Victorian era, when there was a bit of a printing became cheaper, and people were able to access monthly magazines, and there was actually some concern among academics at that point that maybe books were too readily available, and that people were, not being guided in their reading enough, and who knows what ideas they might come up with, if they had access to books. In the same way that I think we sometimes panic about the spread of knowledge through the internet or through, electronic sources, like, oh, we can't control what people see, what will happen? So obviously words have, people have acknowledged that they have an impact as long as we've been printing and disseminating, but I don't think it's entirely passive. I think people do make their own meaning out of the words that they use.
Yeah, I struggled with this question too. Honestly, I feel it's pretty rare that a book really changes somebody that much. Maybe at a certain time of your life, you're really affected. But, the first thing that came to my mind was Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream. Very important in America in the 1960s, 70s, was very important in our history for the black people to get their rights. And he was killed after that speech. I don't remember how many weeks or months, but he was basically killed because of his strong words and his strong thinking and his strong beliefs. So, but that's pretty rare that that words have that much power. So, I don't know. I've read many books that have affected me then, and I guess it's all inside me and it's all there, but if I could, can I really say it's changed the world or even me for that long? I don't know. Sorry.
Does it change the world, or does it change our perception of the world?
But for me, frankly, it's people. I mean, it's my relationship with my friends or my colleagues or my, other writers, or, for me, it's the relationship. And yes, we use words. It's all about words. It's all about communication to me. And not many people take the time to write a whole book, right? It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of sweat and a lot of, patience and work. So, I mean, not many people will take this. How many people have written a book in this room? Right? I mean, maybe. So, please try. Please do it. A small book even, or make a book on the internet and put it on your Facebook, or put it on something. Or maybe not Facebook, but somewhere. Ebook, or I don't know, all those places.
It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be really like a book, really book length, but even like a good article, a good prose, or a poem.
A good essay.
Yeah, a good lyric. Yeah. So, we're giving this a very sort of like I think that part of it is because I myself study communication and study words in a sense, and I sort of believe that reading as a part of us that we've been doing, that it shaped, like as Janet said, that it shaped our perspective to the world. And that's part of who we are in a sense, and that actually drive us like, I wouldn't want to use the word determine, but shape how we actually work with other people, be with other people that are with us. So that's sort of like the way how I was thinking about that. And all right, so how about the next question? I'm thinking about, I do believe that readings make us good thinker, better thinkers. And so in your sense, what are good readers, and how can we become good readers?
Please make time for reading, like you said that you don't have any time, or you said you don't have any time to read. It's so hard. In Hong Kong in particular, we're so busy and we're so tired, and usually I read before I go to sleep, and of course I can only read a few pages unless if I'm really tired. So then I miss it, and that's what I do on holidays, right? We bring our books and we love it, and I love long plane rides because I can sit there and just me and my book. It's beautiful, but so make time. I mean, it's a simple thing, but it's the most important thing for me.
And the other thing is to read just for the pleasure of it, not to pass exams, not to improve your grades, not necessarily to pass exams, not necessarily to improve your grades. Find a good story and just lose yourself in the story. Read it just because you want to read it, not because you're going to get better marks, not because it's been set for homework. None of those. They're all good reasons, but they're not as important as reading for your own satisfaction and pleasure, for the joy of discovering new ways of saying things, meeting new characters, just for fun. We don't do enough things just for fun these days, and the older I get, the more and I could give you quite a lot of years, the more I'm determined not to do something unless it's fun. And in fact, I've actually, as you know, I've said to my principal at the school that I work at, I love this job, I love what I do, and when I stop enjoying it, I'll leave. If it's not fun, I'm not going to do it anymore, because I think it's important.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of Hong Kong students, so far I've met with like 4 or 5 different generations of university students when they come up to, and they are in the School of English. Some of them really enjoy reading, they enjoy the language itself, but quite a number of them still think that, well, the reason why I study English, that I use English, is because it is for pragmatic reason. It's just because that I want to get better job, or higher education. And I always think that you have to look for something really fun for yourself to do that in English. Otherwise, you won't really learn very well in it.
I frequently have conversations with parents of my students who say to me, how do I get my child to read? You know, it's always the question. And when I say to them, your child can read anything. Anything they read that they find interesting is going to build their ability to read. It's going to build them their habit, and that's the ultimate thing. And I get this skeptical eyebrow raised back. It's like, really? Because I say things like, read, if you like the teen magazines where that you read about your favorite, you know, boy band or whatever in it, that's still reading. That's still useful. And, you know, parents, shouldn't they be reading the newspaper and, you know, reading the editorials? That must be good reading. And we have this idea that there's certain things that are good to read and other things that are not good to read, and that we should only be reading the good stuff. We're encouraging kids to read the academic stuff, and I think it goes to that idea that reading has to have you know, if you ask a student, why do you read? I read to gain knowledge and to learn vocabulary. That's what every student will say to you. But you should be reading because it expands your world, and you need to be interested in what you're reading in order to absorb it. And so reading anything is important. I think, so to me, being a good reader is about being open to reading anything. But I also think it's related to being willing and giving yourself permission to critique what you're reading and not just accept everything that comes in. And to realize that somebody is behind those printed words making a decision about which word to use and what order to put it in and what connotation the word is going to have, and that person made choices. You can critique those choices, and you can also make choices for yourself about the words that you use, and you're part of that process. And we may not all be writers, you know, may not all be the people who have the time and the energy to sit down and write a book, but we are all storytellers. We all create stories about the things that happen to us. And if you can view somebody else's stories, whether written or spoken, as a construction, and realize that you can also construct those, I think that makes you feel more attached to reading. You know, you can see how the process happens, and you can see how you could use language. And so you want to have as broad an experience as possible to add to your own toolkit that way. So I think that makes it, you know, for a good reader as well.
Yes, yeah. And also I think that like knowing the background, like the context of, you know, for example, the period where the author came from, and even when they're being reprinting, what kind of circumstances they are being reprinted. Sometimes you will sort of like be able to see there are more than just the text itself. There are a lot more others, you know, like better stories that are happening in there. So that lead me to the next question about the relationship between books and the periods that they are written and or printed, depends on like which perspective you want to take. So what do you think about like the importance of them, and in your own experience, as a reader enjoying reading, but also as someone who's, you know, teaching reading to kids? What would you share?
I think that, well, I picked the books that I picked because they do have this universal theme that kind of goes beyond the moment in history that the book was written. I mean, that the Grimm's fairy tales, like I said, talk about foundational struggles that we all deal with and that have appealed to people throughout history. The coming of age experience is essential to students. And they don't always need to know the specific historical background. They can tap into a book where they see a young person struggling to, you know, rebelling against their parents or against social norms. In any context, they can appreciate that. But I also think that they get more out of a story sometimes to know what the historical context is and understand the references. So I think that you don't have to teach everything about the book before the student reads it. You can introduce it and let them make a personal connection, but then offer some information to help them appreciate kind of the individual references there. One of the reasons why I like the Grimm stories to me are important as well is because if you look at how they chose to put down those stories in writing, and how they reflect the time that they're in. And then you look at how fairy tales have been changed over time and in different places. You know, the same kinds of stories can tell you a lot about the culture that you're witnessing. If you understand that each story is specific to its culture as well, you can be learning a lot as you read it. So I think, again, it's about realizing that the story was constructed and being critical about it. It's important.
Yeah, I've used that in story workshops where I've told a story, we've looked at the history of the story, the background, the cultural background, and then I've had students rewrite it for Hong Kong, so that they've had to understand how the story works and then think, well, okay, what would that be, that's then, what would we do in Hong Kong? And it really makes them look at the different aspects of the story that make it work. And it's fun, actually, it's fun. They come out with the most outrageous things, but it works as a story.
Well, I actually brought two, they're very new books. I don't know if you know Hong Jai Suk Suk Yun Che Hong, who's a Hong Kong writer and a storyteller. He's really lovely, and it's Chinese and English together in the books, and they're all Hong Kong stories in his life and Hong Kong's life in the past 40 years or so. And they're really lovely. I helped him with the book a little bit, just doing some editing, and I really recommend it. I love it. It's just very personal but historical context stories. A man who walks through the Cross Harbor Tunnel, people who have lived in Choi Yun Chun and have to move out of Choi Yun Chun and how they feel. An old woman who pulls cardboard on the streets and the police are upset that she's blocking the road. And just little stories, but very lovely, sensitive, personal rendering. Very beautiful.
Thank you. I love his writing too. Does he have a regular column?
Does he still in Rainbow?
No,
I don't think he does anymore. Yeah.
But I was reading his stories before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all the speakers sharing with us, and I'm sure that the audience here will feel there was very insightful comments. And so, so I think that right now we're open to the floor. If you have any questions for our speakers.
Particularly the younger people in our audience, I hope you've all thought of one question. Could we start in the back over there with you, please? Yeah. One question to any one of our speakers here. Any question you want, something related to reading.
Maybe I start first.
Sure, Joseph, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, as our technology grows up, so many people read in internet or download e-book in iPad. So I would like to know, do you think that printed book will become a history portal and in the future? Yeah.
I knew we were going to get that. No, absolutely not. Categorically no. There is definitely a place for e-readers and reading on screens and what have you. But if you think about all the wonderful libraries we've got, from ancient Sumeria onwards, bits of papyrus, hand-copied manuscripts, all of those amazing things, they survived partly because people cared so much for them, but partly because they were on paper. Your e-book will die. Technically, your e-book will die. I mean, I'm of the generation where, hey, we can videotape something. Videotapes? They're gone. Audio tapes. Who has a player for an audio tape?
I do.
Yeah. If you didn't buy it 20 years ago, it's very difficult to buy something you can play audio tapes on now. CDs, we're told, are on their way out. DVDs, Blu-ray. Every time you change the technology, what you play it on disappears. What you played it on before disappears. We throw machinery away. but you could put a book in a cupboard and forget it. 25 years later, you can take it out. It might be a bit yellow, it might have a few insects, but it's still
And you can still use it.
and it still smells just as good. Because that's something that machinery can never do, is give you that smell. I asked a student recently to help me unpack a box of books and left him to do it while I went to do something else. Came back thinking he'd have done it, and he'd only done half of it. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I've got to do this." And every book came out. It was the smell of the needle. Do you understand that? I know. It was that. It's a very tactile. It's a very, very basic thing. We need to touch things to interact with them. So yes, I think, you know, if you want to go on holiday and take 25 books with you, put them on a Kindle. Great. It doesn't weigh much. But books as objects will always be with us.
Thank you.
That's the librarian's take.
All right, a question from one of our younger audience members. Have you thought of a question yet in the back? A question about reading?
We're really not scary.
How to improve English
Through reading.
through reading.
Well, I mean, the thing I talked about before, read anything that you like. Don't put pressure on yourself to read something that you think is a classic book or is going to teach you good vocabulary. You know, reading anything in English is going to improve it. And talk about what you read. Share your opinions and find out from other people what their opinions are, because it will help you build your ability to express yourself. Okay, so read anything and talk about it with people when you're reading it, and share what you've read. You know, I think that's how you use reading to build your communication skills. And have fun with it.
Yeah. Read. Find somebody younger than you. Get a picture book and share it. Read books out loud, because you discover things when you read books out loud that you didn't notice when you were just reading it to you.
Do you have a younger brother or sister?
Yeah.
But maybe you can tell stories to your younger. I did that to my little sister. I was on the top bunk in the bunk bed, the two-story beds. I was on the top and she was on the bottom, and I would only look at the ceiling and tell the story. But it was lovely. And then later, because I live in Hong Kong and most of my family, I'm the only person in my family here, so I write many letters. And this was my first writing, was letters. And I lived away from my family and my friends, so I still send many letters. Even to my friends in Hong Kong, I write little cards. And they love it. Everybody loves getting the little letters. And if you love words, you will be happy to learn more, or write more, or read more. So, have fun.
Really, really good suggestion. You know, I don't speak English as my first language. Right? So unlike all of you, many of you, I know all of you, many of you, that I go to local school, English is only something that within the school context. And I think that the beautiful suggestion that the speakers here gave is really important. One, you have to read something that you really enjoy. Don't think about that it was for exam, because you will feel like a victim. You will feel like this is not something that you enjoy and you like. And the second thing, read aloud. That it is a really great suggestion. And when I think that it was only until about 16 or 17 years old when I were able to carry out a general conversation in English. Like before that, I can't quite do it. And the main difference of like jumping off to that sort of like advancement, like that changes, is that I am willing to read aloud and not shy anymore. If you have a little brother, read to your little brother. If you have friends, speak to them in English. And so finding something interesting, I have done a little experiment a number of years ago in the 90s. I was teaching, when I was doing my master here, one of the voluntary work that the voluntary work that I do is teaching a group of Form 3, Form 4 students in a new immigration center, English. And they're not really interested in things like going through the textbook at school. They've already had that with their teachers. And so what I do is I play musicals to them. One of my favorite is Les Miserables. And so when they listen to the songs, they really feel for it, they enjoy the lyrics, and then the next thing, they start to want to read like the simplified version of the English stories that I think you go, the original story, because they want to know what happened to the original characters that are in these books. What happened to their love stories, for example? What happened to their revolution, for example? So I think that that's something that I know that, like if you find the right thing that you enjoy or other people enjoy, even if it's different genre, they are one connected to another. And you will start to enjoy it, and you will sort of like unknowingly improve your English.
Great. I think we only have time for just 2 more questions from these 2 young people over here. Only 1 question.
May I know how to choose a good quality book to read?
Very good question. How to choose a good quality book to read?
Very good expression.
That's a really, really good question, actually. And one of the things that I found that keeps kids from reading, in my experience, has been they feel like they don't know how to choose a book. So I'm glad that you asked. I spend some time reading all around the book, and ask your friends what they like to read as well, and get suggestions. But take a little time when you've got a few books. If you go to your school library, read the back of the book, read the inside cover, read a few pages, and see if it interests you. And if you get hooked or interested, then keep reading. That's a good book for you, okay?
And also accept that you don't have to finish a book. Okay? You don't have to read the whole thing. If you start a book that sounds interesting, and then you decide that it's gone, got boring. Some books do this. They start their plot and then they go like this. Take it back. Take it back. Always borrow books from the library because they well then that way then you're not spending a lot of money and wasting your money, okay? So try it, give it a couple of chapters, give it a fair chance. But if you decide it's not the book for you, it's okay to take it back. You don't have to drag on through a book that you're absolutely hating. So you just have to keep trying lots of different books until you find the kind of book that appeals to you. Because what you like is going to be different to what I like, to what Jen likes. Everybody likes different books. But when you find the right book for you and you thoroughly enjoy it, then you go to your librarian or to your teacher and you say, I really like this. What else can I read? Because at that point, the person, the expert so-called, will know where the next one for you will be. Okay.
And a lot of bookstores will publish a little paper that will talk about the book first, and if you are interested, you can go to the library and get a book. or buy it at the bookstore or whatever, or maybe ask your parents for, a gift for your birthday as a book or something. But yeah, I didn't finish many books.
But it's hard because we feel guilty.
I don't read many novels because for me, a lot of novels are really good at the beginning, and then it's just a little game, I think, that the writer is playing to just have these characters have some kind of relationship, but it's boring to me, but the first part is so beautiful and I'm so happy, and then I get really disappointed, so I've put aside many books, I'm sorry. But I love the first part, and that's enough. It's enough for me. I don't have to like the whole thing, that's fine. And there's one more thing I wanted to say. I remember I think you said it when, I can't remember, but I wanted to say it before. in my primary 3 classroom, I argued a lot with my teacher. And you know, when we read something and you have to answer the questions about what the writer means, and I said, I don't think that. And I would really argue with the teacher, say, no, I don't feel that. I really think they are saying something else. And I think that's okay. I know, of course, you want to do well on the quiz or the exam, but, you know, but that's what reading is to me, is your own connection to those words. This is me and those words, and there's nothing else there at the time when you're reading. And you can understand it. Of course, there are some facts maybe that are you know, you can't change in the writing, but a lot of it is your own relationship to those words. And don't let anybody take that away from you, I think. And it's your own relationship.
Great, and the last question over here.
I just want to ask, how can we choose a book that are suitable for us, and how can a book really open up our mind?
How can a book open up?
So what's your favorite book so far?
I think How to Make My Sister Disappear.
Do you know that book?
How to Make My Sister?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's very personal, right?
So why do you like it so much?
In my younger time, I have an older sister, and she always makes fun of me, and we sometimes argue, and my mother always be angry of us, and sometimes say some bad things. But now she went to California.
So you're happy?
No.
So you made her disappear.
I was going to ask how you did that. I have an older sister.
And she is in high school. Sometimes we miss her, but sometimes we go to Skype and we Skype together. But sometimes we say something bad, and sometimes we argue. And my mom is listening.
That sounds like, to me, quite a normal family. Sort of,
They look pretty happy, don't you think?
yes.
But I think you've already found the key to finding a book that's suitable for you. You found a book that related to your life. You could bring something to it as well. You could judge it as whether or not this was a realistic story, a believable story, because you had that experience. So you need to be, as we've said repeatedly, you need to be interested in what you're reading. And so you found a suitable book, you know. Carry on with that way. How do books open up our minds? I think it's because they tell us something, they confirm something that we already know in some cases. You know, you had an idea and you see that somebody else has the same idea, so you think, oh, okay, I might be on the right track, maybe I do know something. And so you're sharing that idea with somebody, okay? It's a form of communication. So if you're finding books that have a little bit of your experience, but can also teach you something new, I think that's how they open up and teach you things. Yeah?
I would like to share something following these two questions.
Sure.
That is, I find sometimes the book, you have to wait for the book and wait until it's suitable for you. For me, because sometimes I buy different books and I put it on the shelf and I didn't finish maybe half of them. And maybe you won't find it interesting today. Maybe you will just find it several years later. Suddenly, you would like to read that because it's somehow of your personal experience. You grow up, you think differently. Then you will find it interesting. So, be generous to buy books and put it there. And sometimes later, you will find it suitable for you. Great.
And also just read about what you like. So if you like flowers, or you like rocks, or you like whatever, you know, look for books about that. And for me, also just trust yourself. If you like the way the book looks, if you like, and somebody said read around, you know, if you have a good feeling about it, trust yourself and try it.
And sometimes books can reassure you that your ideas are okay
because somebody else has similar ideas or they've had similar thoughts. I'll let you into a secret. I believe in magic. Okay. You might imagine, because I like the Harry Potter, but the first book that I remember having that effect on me was The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Yes. I'm sure you know that one. And I first came across it not to read it, but to listen to it. Because I'm part of the radio generation, and it was on the radio every day, 15 minutes of the book.
Wow.
And
Lucky you.
I would get home, I would
That's
get
why
home.
she's a librarian.
Oh yeah, it is. I would get home and that would be it. I would drop my school bags, say hello to my parents, and switch on the radio. And I would be totally hooked for 15 minutes while this magical voice read a magical story. And I realized that other people believed in funny worlds, strange worlds. And it was okay to enter that world for 15 minutes every day. And that, if you can find a book that does that to you, you'll end up as a librarian. I think
Everybody's a librarian.
Young man over here is definitely on the road.
And the writer of that book, C.S. Lewis, he used to love to write letters to his readers. He wrote so many letters to children who read his book. I didn't get a letter, but I never wrote him a letter.
No, I didn't.
So some writers are really good at communicating to you. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And it's very special when you get a letter signed by a real writer, isn't it?
Another lovely writer is Maurice Sendak, I heard him on the radio just a few weeks ago because he has a new book, and he's a beautiful man, very loving and human, and just if you look him up, Sendak is the family name. Really beautiful.
I think there's a YouTube clip of him being interviewed.
Oh really?
Actually,
Probably.
quite recently. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all for your wonderful insight that you provided to us about books that change history. Hong Kong Reads